Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Cunningham. With me is John Brodigan, and we are here to present to you the vast right ring conspiracy, which is very difficult to say.
And yeah, you're the other one who came up with it.
It's anyway. The reason behind the name, for anybody who's curious, is because Brodigan and I are two right-leaning guys in the political blogosphere, and we both live tweet various wrestling events. And a few weeks back, I asked him, "Hey, you want to do a wrestling podcast?" And he said, "Sure." And so here we are. And we've got a lot of things to cover. This being the inaugural one, we don't want any awkward silences or dead air or anything like that, because
we should actually apologize ahead of time if this sucks, because the first time you and I spoke was only actually like 10 minutes ago.
Right. This is the first time I'm actually here. Well, aside from listening on FTR or anything like that, which you can hear Brodigan on From the Right Radio. And you can find them at FTR. What is it? FTR _ radio, something like that?
FTR, I think it's 2 underscores.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, 2 underscores, FTR 2 underscores radio on Twitter, and you can find their fantastic programming. I used to appear on there regularly when Red State, which I write for redstate.com, had a show that appeared on there. We did a live show every Sunday night called the Red State Weekly Briefing. So for both Brodigan and I, this is not a new venture going into podcasting. But as far as the wrestling thing goes in the modern era, this is the first time I've done a wrestling podcast. I'm not sure about him. I know he's done work in the wrestling media field.
This is the first time I've done a wrestling podcast, but I used to write about it in like the late 90s, 2000, where I first heard of internet radio. And I used to think I was such a big deal. It's like, ooh, I'm doing a radio interview. And then I realized, wait a second, this is just like 5 people listening on like, Real Player 4.
Well, as of right now, we have 1 viewer, and that is better than I thought we were going to do on our first go. Oh, wait, they dropped off.
Oh,
son of a. Well, that's through the Hangout. There might be some people on the YouTube link. I'm not sure. Anyway,
okay.
So jumping into the subjects of the night, let's. Do we want to go back a pay-per-view, or do we want to go forward a pay-per-view?
I say we go back, because you know what it is. We've got to build to the pay-per-view, which is not something that the WWE always does.
And it's really weird having I guess we can't say pay-per-view technically, because Elimination Chamber was just a WWE network-only event.
They still call it, didn't they still call it a pay-per-view, though?
I think like during Raw or something, Cole was getting yelled at by Vince McMahon over the phones, over the earphones, because you could hear him stumble after he said something about the last pay-per-view or something like that. But going back to Elimination Chamber, the Chambers has kind of been it was, when it was a regular pay-per-view, kind of awkwardly placed, because it came between the Royal Rumble, which the winner of the Royal Rumble went on to main event WrestleMania, and WrestleMania. And so you had the potential, theoretically, for the title to change hands before that WrestleMania main event, which kind of threw things up in the air. Then they got rid of the Elimination Chamber as a pay-per-view event, and then brought it back as a network exclusive. So now we go from having a pay-per-view to a network exclusive to Money in the Bank coming up with 2 weeks between them, which is a lot to fit in to just a few weeks span for the WWE. And there's been a lot that's going on. And, the most recent one, I guess, let's start with the big news on that one, and the fact that Dean Ambrose, quote unquote, won the WWE World Heavyweight title from Seth Rollins, only for it to be taken away because it was ruled a disqualification after the fact.
Yeah, and it was actually like that was one of those things, and you could actually, as I was live tweeting it, it's like this isn't actually happening. This isn't actually happening. You knew that they were going with a dusty finish, and then eventually when the second referee came out, like, oh yeah, there it goes. But I like the way they kept it, where he still left with the title. So it at least sets it up for something else, as opposed to the usual, lazy screw job ending where we're like, well, we don't want him to actually lose, but we don't want him to actually win. So we'll do 2 referees and a bump, and then we'll just do a stupid disqualification.
And I'm kind of like, I like that they because there were so many screwy endings they could have thrown in, and it's not something that they're unfamiliar with, clearly. But I think I think going the route they did was actually ended up being better for them in terms of telling the story, because now you have the really upset Dean Ambrose just stealing the title. And then you have Roman Reigns coming out on Monday afterwards and, speaking for Ambrose, who wasn't even there, all the stuff going on. And I think the transition from main event to main event for these two big events for WWE is going to tell a really good story, which is not something they've been doing on a regular basis recently.
No, and it's especially when they'll start to, and then either they'll get bored or like the fans will be enjoying it too much, and next thing you know, they're giving Ryback the Intercontinental title. But I mean, for the most part, when it's come to booking 2/3 of the Shield, it's always generally been entertaining. Which isn't a shot at Roman Reigns, because back before he got injured, I actually thought him in the main event of WrestleMania made sense. But when you realized it wasn't working, you got the feeling that he was pushed just because Vince is spiteful, and because the fans got what they wanted, like the year before with Daniel Bryan, because that was another case with him just like blatantly ignoring the audience. So I'm a little out of practice, so I'm with a long rambling sentence. But at the end of the day, at least 2/3 of the Shield, it's always they're always well booked.
And I think in particular, Dean Ambrose, whose style, his demeanor, both on the mic and in the ring, are just one of the more vastly entertaining things to come out of this post-Shield era, I guess you could call it, where he gets booked, whether it's consistently or not. He's always going to provide an entertaining match, regardless of who it's against, regardless of whether or not it's a filler match or something else. Ambrose is going to deliver. Seth Rollins, as much as I hate the whiny dependent character that he is, his style in the ring is very entertaining. And Reigns, to his credit, also has a very good style. I think he does do well in that powerhouse style. But in terms of the character's been inconsistent, whether it's been that quiet, domineering type, or as they've awkwardly transitioned to this smug, cocky, kind of flippant, kind of anti-authoritarian dude who's not really pulling off the character very well. Now, to his credit, after the Royal Rumble finish, his mic skills were terrible. And he's starting to get better on it. He is starting to get better. I think he's starting to fit into that character a little bit more, but it's still very awkward. And it's nice to see him taking part in the main event scene without being part of the main event scene right now with this whole Ambrose Rollins situation.
Yeah, and the mic skills, I think it was less his mic skills as much as he doesn't have Vince feeding him lines anymore. There is no possible way that I think early 30s, late 20-year-old professional wrestler decided to come up with the word suffer and succotash on their own. That has to be Vince. But what again? He's definitely been great since post WrestleMania, and I think there was some concern that there was going to be too much backlash. I actually think they're building to a triple threat match between the three of them at SummerSlam, or at least in the Night of Champions, because I had actually the pregame show before Elimination Chamber, it looked like that they were foreshadowing a heel turn from Reigns too much. And
it came off very strong.
Yeah, that's what I actually thought was going to be the screw job ending. So now, and they're acting a little bit too buddy. So now I'm wondering if they're going to go for finally get the Shield three-way dance, or I'm sorry, triple threat match, three-way dance with ECW.
And as far as that goes, no matter who does the turning or what, that would in and of itself be a great match. It would almost be as good, I think, as the rumored Rollins Triple H match down the road that people say they see a building toward. And I think a Rollins versus Triple H match would also be a pretty interesting one to watch in terms of watching this very iconic, very well-known personality going up against the young guy in a way that has been done but hasn't been done in terms of the Shield versus Evolution thing. Now you get Reigns Triple H one-on-one, and I think you have all of a sudden a different dynamic there where Triple H as the heel with the resources versus Seth Rollins, who knows how he would be going into the match, whether or not people support him suddenly because he made a face turn, or whether or not he's kind of the lone actor fighting for himself in kind of that John Cena style, which I hope I never have to say those words again. Speaking of Cena, dropped the title, or he's got the U.S. title right now. It appears they're going to be building toward either a redemption match for him at Money in the Bank after losing to Kevin Owens at Elimination Chamber, or him dropping the title to Kevin Owens at Money in the Bank.
I mean, I was reading that, and whether or not this means anything, apparently the creative team realizes that the usual John Cena gets his win back booking isn't going to work with Kevin Owens this time around.
No.
Because that was, especially the way it was booked. I mean, I've actually, I mean, for all the complaining people do about John Cena because he gets tiresome on the stage, but like the way he let himself be booked in the Brock Lesnar match at SummerSlam, where he just got annihilated, and the way he let himself get put over with the way he let himself put over Kevin Owens, where I mean it was a more even keel match, but it was like a clean pin and Owens looked like a monster.
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed I did in the first place, but they need to think of something better than like him just getting his win back.
And that is, again, it's a matter of style versus character, where Cena's style is one in terms of the wrestling can be exciting. You know, people joke about the 5 moves of doom or whatever, and then he pulls out something like
5 moves of doom works.
But then he comes off with the springboard stunner all of a sudden and starts throwing that around. Of course, it's not, putting anybody down permanently, but it's still a great move that kind of comes out of nowhere when he occasionally throws in the power bomb or something like that you don't expect. The funniest thing to me is anytime he tries to pull off the Hurricane Rana, it's just, what is he doing? What is John Cena doing performing some sort of luchador type move in the middle of a ring when he is, again, one of those powerhouse type characters? I was doing on another podcast an interview with a senior writer from Comics Alliance, Chris Sims, and I think he probably put it in the best way possible when it comes to John Cena. Is John Cena's character is broken beyond all repair. The way he's been booked, the way his character has been portrayed and written, at this point, it's a broken character. You cannot alter the character. John Cena, I don't think, will ever be able to pull off a heel situation, or a written heel situation. He's got the crowds hating him like he is a heel. But as far as, think back to his feud with John Cena, you can how mentally just, and then the very next week he's back with Photoshop images and jokes of the Wyatt effect from any of those, mind shatter or the supposed mind. So you can't have John Cena's character fluctuate ways. I'm intense. I'm here. I'm ready to fight. And it's never that whole questioning, can I do it, whatever. It's always kind of thing. And that's what leads him to get those. And when it comes to Kevin Owens, is he going to get it? Is Owens going to go over clean? Or even better, is Orton, I keep saying Orton, is Owens going to go over dirty, and now it's going to be questionable as to who's the better man? Does it lead them to a third match?
I think in order for the third match, you have to have a win. Cena's got to get the win back, so that way you have the rubber match. I actually wouldn't. I would even prefer it where, you know, have Owens win dirty, or have something, some kind of non-finish finish happen with at the next match, and then have Owens cost Cena the U.S. title during one of his open challenges, and then build the feud. Then eventually in the end, Cena's going to get his win back, but at least stretch it out, as opposed to just having it be the next two matches that he gets the win back.
And the thing that I wonder is, how is this U.S. title going to shape out with Cena? Is he going to lose it to Owens? Because typically when somebody gets called up from NXT, or in several cases when somebody's been getting called up from NXT and they have the NXT title, or they have some title, they get a WWE title, then they drop the NXT title. Like Paige had the NXT women's title, came up, beat AJ Lee for the Divas title, then dropped the NXT women's title. You had who was the tag team that came up that was called up? I think there was a tag team. I'm sorry?
Ascension?
No, there was a tag team that had the tag team titles in NXT, came up, and after they got their main roster debut, dropped the NXT tag titles. I can't remember who it was, but
apparently they're back in NXT, because I can't remember them either.
But then you also have guys like Adrian Neville, who didn't have a title, debuts, does a phenomenal job, has two good feuds, I think. And now I'm wondering how they're going to position him next. Like, these guys who are coming in, whether it's Owens, whether it's Neville, whether it's the Ascension, if they ever find something for them that isn't ridiculous, what are these guys? What are the current veterans? I guess this is an awkward transition. What are these current veterans going to do, or how are these current veterans going to be booked against these up and comers like Owen, like Neville, these guys? How is that transition going to take place as you have more and more superstars coming up from the very successful show that is NXT and the NXT TakeOver events? And then you move these guys up to the superstar level on the main roster. How are the current veterans going to respond to that in terms of backstage morale and onstage booking?
They're going to hold on to, if history dictates, they're going to hold on to their spot for as long as they can and play a lot of backstage politics. Hopefully not for long. I mean, I do like what Cena's been doing with the U.S. title, because at least he's giving you're seeing all these guys coming up and with like big Raw matches, because it's very easy to get lost on Raw because Vince McMahon doesn't care about wrestling. But which I actually think is the fascinating thing about NXT. I have a theory about this. I think you hear grumblings in the back where the WWE roster is upset because they watch NXT and they're actually allowed to wrestle. Like the women's wrestlers, first of all, they're called women, not divas, and they're actually allowed to put on wrestling matches as opposed to whatever you call the divas division in Raw. I have a theory that when Triple H takes over the WWE, NXT is what it looks like if he's running an organization. He seems to understand. It's like, okay, this is entertainment for who our fans are. Vince has always been about entertainment for who he wanted the fans to be, and I think that's why NXT is getting over so well, because you hear the raw audience chanting NXT a lot more than you hear them chanting for anyone that the WWE creative team thinks should be popular. And
that's a very good point. And I think when you look at the guys who have come up, or the guys who are about to come up, I will tell you that even though their gimmick will not make it on TV, my favorite, just in terms of characters being allowed to do what they want to do, are the vaudevillains on NXT. I love the gimmick. I liked their original entrance music more than I like what they currently do. But The Vaudevillains were just a ridiculous gimmick that were, kind of 90s era WWE ridiculous gimmick that comes out and they do what they do. They're entertaining about it and they get to wrestle. It's not like some cheap gimmick that comes out. It's not like the early Bo Dallas WWE roster thing where he comes out, he does the Bo Leave thing, he runs around the ring, he makes some sort of joke and he leaves, or he gets the snot beat out of him or whatever. In fact, I think the current Bo Dallas, the one who was just in a feud with Adrian Neville, is the most entertaining he's been since NXT.
Yeah, and that's actually because you see that with Bo Dallas and you see that with Adam Rose. And with that, I mean, you see them when you actually pay attention and you let them wrestle and you let them do stuff, you see how entertaining that they can be. And yet they go on the Raw roster, and if Vince isn't like entertaining like a week and a half, they're on superstars for the rest of their career. I have no idea. The Ascension, I have no idea what they were thinking with them. That has got to be the dumbest tag team gimmick I've seen in a long time. And I don't know if they were more entertaining in NXT or not, but they're just terrible.
And I don't really get it either. I don't get what they've been trying to do with Ascension. And I think the mood was kind of set, whether intentional or not, when they had JBL and the old school tag teams coming out and just beating the snot out of Ascension. And it's kind of a metaphor for we've been trying to rebuild this division and this is what you're going to do. It was just mind-numbing to see the Ascension gimmick and the fact that they're still going with that gimmick. And they're actually getting spots in tag team matches against the tag team champions, not necessarily for the title yet, but they keep trying to make them make a play for it. And all you can think is, wow, this gimmick seems, one, really familiar, and two, is really kind of dry. And I don't think they were more entertaining in NXT. I think NXT was kind of the perfect market for them because it was, guys testing out what they could and wanted to do. And I think they should have taken a look at it and said, this has kind of been done before, so let's see if we can get you guys doing something new.
Yeah, I think when NXT first came out, the original Ascension, it was more like demonic and satanic, and that was at least interesting. Now this is just, it's Powers of Pain with heavy metal music.
Basically, yeah, that's the best way I think it has been put. Let's see, other NXT guys. Sami Zayn. When Sami Zayn gets called up, he's going to be a fantastic performer.
I got to be honest with you. I think the reason why Kevin Owens is getting called up is because Sami Zayn got injured and he's taking his spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the way they put him over, where they gave him like an incredible match against Cena and having him be introduced by Bret Hart when in Canada.
Yeah. You
can't ask for better than that.
No, and Zayn is phenomenal in terms of his performance. The through the rope DDT on the floor is one of my favorite things, just because of it takes a little bit of it takes quite a bit of precision to be able to pull that particular one off. And his style, his character, they all are this very. It's kind of like what John Cena would be if he were liked, and if they'd written the John Cena character before they broke it and made it impossible to change him. That very upbeat, that very I'm going to continue doing what I do kind of guy. That kind of uplifting spirit. You don't have too many of those right now. The current top baby faces are the anti-hero Dean Ambrose.
Yeah.
If you could count Reigns as one, the inconsistent character. Adrian Neville, who doesn't do a whole lot of talking on the mic right now. He just goes out there and jumps from incredible heights for no discernible reason. And you had Daniel Bryan, whose character was a lot like the Zayn character, but Bryan's style, which is what I worry about Neville and Zayn and some of the others, Bryan's style leads him to getting a lot of critical injuries that take him out for months at a time. So... these performers and some of the others that are in NXT right now who will get called up eventually are going to have a tremendous workload ahead of them because they're going to be going from the NXT roster, which is smaller, to the Raw and SmackDown rosters, which have a lot of faces in there, and you're going to be fighting for airtime. both in the back and on stage. And if, like in some cases where you have, if John Cena likes you, John Cena pushes you, and John Cena's word carries a lot of weight, so you'll get a lot more airtime early on. But if you don't have anybody like that who's in your corner, are you going to be able to get out there and get the airtime that you need to really cement yourself as a character people want to see?
Well, that's actually, I think it's going to be easier for a lot of NXT wrestlers, mainly because, you're worried about having someone on your side, considering that if you view NXT as like Triple H's vanity project, he's going to want to make sure they all get over and get time, because in the end it just makes him look good also. In case in point, they announced that on July 4th they're going to have the Tokyo show live on the network. John Cena is on the card. Brock Lesnar is on the card. The main event is Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor.
Finn Balor is another one who has done phenomenally.
And they also have Chris Jericho's in a fight against Neville.
Nice.
Where Neville's probably going over.
Mm-hmm.
Going Jericho. So I mean, if you bust your ass in NXT and you can prove to be entertaining, when you get called up to the roster, I think you can count on Triple H to protect you, just because this is his baby, this is his vanity project, and it's a way for him to put over young talent without having to lose.
Now that does also bear the question, however, when Triple H takes over, what happens to NXT? Does he run both NXT and Raw? Does he find somebody else to take NXT? What happens then when those guys who are in NXT, what happens if the show quality drops there?
I think that there are enough people who could take over for him, and especially since, I think because he's Vince's son-in-law, WWE is very hands-off when it comes to the booking. If it was, say, like Paul Heyman, or if it was Vince Russo, God, perish the thought, then I don't think it would be. You'd probably be more micromanaging from WWE end. When Triple H comes over and takes over the main company, I would assume that because he wants to see NXT strive, the person he puts in charge will probably have the same booking philosophy as he does.
That is a good point. And it, and again, you mentioned, what if it was like a Heyman or a Russo? And again, we can't actually say the latter's name another time, because if that happens, then all of a sudden he is summoned. That's how that works. It's kind of like a Beetlejuice thing. Is he appears if you say his name 3 times. But in terms of that Heyman style.
Just on a side note, what a one-trick pony. I mean, look, God bless him. When he had Vince McMahon keeping him, reining him in, the Attitude Era was great. And literally every single booking job he's gotten since then, TNA, both stints with WCW, you basically saw what Raw would have looked like if you didn't have a grown-up in charge. That's
very much true. And I'm so glad that he has been pushed to the point of irrelevancy where he has to come out and insult somebody who's in charge of something in order to make himself feel better. Like the whole, they found out that I was still writing for TNA type deal, and he was trashing everything after that. But anyway. And saying,
Sami Zayn's not a superstar. He just has a lot of fans. Did you even listen to yourself?
I'd forgotten he said that. Anyway, you mentioned Heyman, and I kind of want to transition to this. You mentioned Lesnar and you mentioned Heyman, which is perfect for bringing up the next topic I wanted to go to tonight, and that was the Austin Heyman podcast. The Steve Austin podcast, once again, aired live on the WWE Network after Raw this past week. And we saw a very good discussion on the history of the sport and a very awkward ending between the two of them. And I wanted to go to that awkward ending first because it came about when Heyman said, how about the next WrestleMania, since it's going to be in Texas, let's have you versus Lesnar. And Austin said, I'm going to have to, kick his ass or whatever. And because that's what Austin would say in that situation, both in character and in real life. And because I think Austin realized, I know Heyman was just playing to the internet crowd that wants to see that type of match. And those are some of the rumors that fly around. But Austin, taking it very seriously, like if he's going to come back for one more match, it's going to be on his terms. He's going to win if it's at home, and it's going to be more or less his way. And things seemed to get a little tense between them. And so, what was your take on that particular part of the podcast? We'll get into some of the other stuff in a sec, but
I'm not sure. I think one of two things: either he and Austin work that out. Either they actually have a plan. Either he or Austin work that out ahead of time, just for the sake of creating a buzz, or Heyman just asked as a joke, and Austin was so quick he went right into Stone Cold mode. I've been so used to listening to like podcast Steve Austin and occasionally showing up doing comedy spot Steve Austin. I completely forgot about the Stone Cold character. And when he went into character, I'm thinking to myself, they have to do the match now. I don't know how, but they have to do the match now. I mean, CM Punk's not around to have the Steve Austin match. It's got to, it's got to be Punk. It's got to be Austin versus Lesnar.
What a great triple threat that would be, is Lesnar versus Punk versus Austin. But anyway, I got that vibe too, that, yeah, he went into that Stone Cold character, but it was so abrupt that for a while I kind of wondered, whoa, was he really pissed about it? And then I'm thinking, okay, no, he just kind of switched in that character mode. I'm whether or not they worked it out or whether or not it was, on purpose or anything, I think they've set themselves up to where, yeah, that's pretty much something they've got to do at some point, because it is going to be a great event if they put those two in the ring together. And on the subject of Brock Lesnar, I was at WrestleMania when it was in New Orleans, which, by the way, the greatest thing in the world is a bunch of drunk wrestling fans on Bourbon Street.
Nice.
Especially when you have them doing the Daniel Bryan yes chant, and also the Randy Savage clap clap chant.
Something? I'm fairly certain that chant originated in New York. The very first time I heard it, at least, was like Derek Jeter or Let's Go Yankees, clap 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 clap. And ever since then, I might be taking claim for something that's not mine, but I'm fairly certain that chant originally started at Yankee Stadium.
Well, that's fine. If New York wants to take credit for something else, that's great.
Yeah, well,
I mean, New York did bring in de Blasio, so yeah, everything belongs to the people. But anyway, when on Bourbon Street, walking by one of the balconies there, and they're doing the Randy Savage chant underneath that, and then you look up at the balcony, and all of a sudden a guy walks out amidst a crowd on the balcony dressed up as Randy Savage, and I kid you not, starts throwing Slim Jims to people. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen. But anyway,
now did you have to flash them to get the Slim Jims, kind of like Mardi Gras?
No, I did not, and thankfully so, because that would have caused issues. Anyway, so I was in New Orleans for WrestleMania, and I was seated kind of close to the ramp. So I was, it was rows back, but I could see the ramp pretty well. And it was a great show, and we get to the Lesnar Undertaker match, and I've gone back and I've seen the replay on the network, but there was something really, really intense about that 3 count against the Undertaker, and I'd say all this talking about Lesnar. You could not only hear but feel all of the air in the room getting sucked in, because everybody at the same instant gasped. Even people who weren't wrestling fans gasped because they knew what was about to happen.
Even people at home. I'm actually surprised that the people watching at home didn't suck the air out of America.
It was intense, and I remember thinking, holy, and trying to keep this PG era WWE. I'm not going to say what the rest of that phrase, but my little brother, who was with me, who had not seen wrestling in a very long time, was like, whoa, because he knew that wasn't supposed to happen. And everybody thought there was some sort of mistake or whatever. And so I go type of like we are officially, which that's why we folks coming. That Lesnar was at. How do you get more over as a heel? Now with the decision that he gets to snap this, you can understand everything else. Last things he has is to snap the. He comes out and the contract and always shows up once every few weeks.
It's a good deal.
On average, great deal. And he only has to think in that instant that's how that character and that don't show off the best thing you have all the time. It's better if it's something that's on whether or not Lesnar, who is likely to face as Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, just in terms of how he was suspended. Lesnar's going to come back as a beast bent on vengeance, and I think there's going to be a great feud waiting for him when he does come back. And the way that he was booked from the WrestleMania New Orleans through the last, year and a few months, Lesnar is one of those types that when you see him and you see Heyman and you see them both walk out, it's going to be really intense. And so to see a really intense match between Lesnar and Austin, to bring it back to where my rambling was supposed to go, when you see a match between Austin and Lesnar, you almost get the feeling like, oh God, how could this, this could go wrong, because Lesnar, who's supposed to be that beast who snapped the streak at WrestleMania, who is a WWE World Heavyweight Champion, who absolutely demolished John Cena with dozens of German suplexes over a 3-month span. Have him come in and lose to Steve Austin because it's in Steve Austin's backyard. WrestleMania, it's Austin's last match or whatever. Feels like that would really be something is the character that Brock Lesnar is building for the couple years. You still there?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I lost you. You were breaking up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's quite.
So anyway, the idea that
this is why it's the pilot.
Lesnar has built this character. Get all these technical things working, maybe another. But anyway, in terms of Lesnar's character, to build up the way he's built up the last, kind of from that dominating track to the streak to the Cena feud, and then coming to lose to Steve Austin seems like it's everything that character development is supposed to be. What are your thoughts?
I don't think all the character. I mean, okay, all the character development shouldn't be going to losing to Steve Austin, even though it probably will because it's WWE. I mean, I would like to see all the character development go to losing to someone, say like Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins, where you've built up this huge beast of a character. If he's going to lose, or if he's going to get pinned cleanly, have it be by someone where he's actually going to be. I was actually originally it worked out in the end, but I think a lot of people were annoyed when they saw Lesnar beat the Undertaker's streak because he was a part-time wrestler, and whoever beat the streak, that should have been what you built the rest of your career on. You know, CM Punk should have broken the streak. Edge should have broken the streak, as opposed to like a part-time wrestler who's going to break the streak and then disappear for 6 months. And I think that having like Steve Austin or another retired wrestler come back just to pin like Brock Lesnar after all he's done to build the character, going from pretty much from when he came back up to beating the Undertaker streak and like the year about a year and a half after that, they should, if they're going to have him lose and lose in a big marquee match, have it be against someone where that person's going to make that part of his career. You know, I'm the one who beat the beast.
I'm looking at Twitter, and WWE is Macho Mandow right now, which is also a terrific gimmick. And they're in Lake Charles. This is weird. They were in Baton Rouge last night. From Baton Rouge.
Okay.
In the middle is Lafayette, Louisiana. They're going to be on Tuesday night to record SmackDown. I'm not even sure where they're supposed to be tomorrow night. It's so they're just kind of, there doesn't seem to be any sort of real organs other than Louisiana. Maybe they'll go up to Shreveport, which is about 3 hours north. To get tickets to the SmackDown on Tuesday, but they're back in Lafayette for on September, I think, which might be, I don't know. Anyway,
and actually,
but yeah, I
was going to say, go ahead.
But anyway, going back to this, yeah, the somebody being the Beast shouldn't be Steve Austin when it comes to the next WrestleMania. Now, what happens between now and then, somebody could beat the Beast. It could be the Beast. It could be Seth Rollins. It could be one of those younger guys to come up and demolish, or not necessarily demolish, but come away with a win over Brock Lesnar to end their career. And then Brock Lesnar, before he takes another feud, has this one legendary match at WrestleMania. Could work out like that. But we've got 9 months until then. There's a whole lot that, or 9 or 10 months. There's a whole lot that would have to happen in that short span of time. And WWE storylines don't typically last very long, so they've got to fit in a ton quick in order to get to that. Now it is, let's see, about a quarter till, and we still have a few more subjects to talk about.
And actually, one of them, speaking of the WWE Twitter feed, apparently they tweeted up something where Stardust claims that he knows Stephen Amell's secret.
Oh dear. Oh good. That I love the show Arrow, and I love Stephen Amell as an actor. And
you notice he seems like a cool dude in general. Like, he seems like a bro.
He does, and just the way he handles social media, which is it's in a way that not very many actors do. He's very personal when it comes to what he does on social media, and he has been wanting to get involved with WWE for a while now. And the feud seems to be with Cody Rhodes, aka Stardust. And so I guess the very first question, it's one that was, I think, is it going to be Stardust in way against even a Stardust in some way against Arrow?
If I were to guess, I would say as the Mel, because I can't see the WWE putting over another fictional character that they don't own.
Very
And
true.
and especially since they're very sensitive about getting like mainstream Hollywood acceptance. I don't think that they would
Mm-hmm.
get that with like a fictional character. It would have to be the actor. So I think you would probably see Stardust versus Amel, and I think you would probably see Stardust play that he doesn't actually realize that Amel that the was a fictional character, and he thinks that he's actually. I can see them booking it where Stardust thinks that he's fighting Oliver Queen.
That would be amazing. And I don't necessarily see it being impossible where, yeah, he comes out as a male, or he's taking part in this fight as a male, but something happens where he realizes he has to fight Stardust on his level and he puts on a hood or something like that. Because when it comes to putting over, folks from Hollywood, we all know how well that it worked putting over the guys from Entourage who got a earth-shattering 18 million in the first week in ticket sales for the new Entourage movie. And we also remember that WCW did a great job in putting over guys like RoboCop and and Chucky, the doll was just random.
They
I barely
only because
remember that.
thank God that my family didn't have cable then, so I didn't have to actually watch that stuff.
Possibly the working world was Sting. I think it was Sting being trapped in a cage. That had to be just awkward as an act. And then where Gene Okerlund is interviewing somebody in the middle of the ring, and all of a sudden, Chucky appears on the screen and starts saying random evil sadistic crap to the person in the ring.
Actually, let me see if it's up. There used to be a website called WrestleCrap.com that used to cover all this stuff. Oh my God, it's still up.
I know Cracked.com did a list of the weirdest things to happen in wrestling too. But anyway, just the idea of Stephen Amell, maybe, I don't know, in some cheesy WWE style, realizes the only way he can beat Stardust is by playing Stardust at his game and assuming the different identity of the Arrow in order to overcome him or something like that. That's the way I see it going down right now. Of course, it could go down completely differently because, whether or not my idea makes sense, I think it makes more sense than some of the other ideas WWE's put out in the last couple of years. But I mean,
which isn't saying much, but
well, yeah. But in terms of getting the kind of the overall theme of getting Hollywood a little bit more involved in what they do, because wrestling is kind of is still mainstream, but still not kind of. It's kind of weird in the way that you have a lot more people. Like I teach at a school, and there are kids who come in wearing John Cena shirts like that, and they're like in the minority, and there's tons of kids who have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about when I address the kid's shirt. But when I say something like John Cena, they're like, oh, that wrestling guy. It's like, okay, you don't recognize the shirt, but you know John Cena's name. Great. And to get to where they are acting a little bit more mainstream and to get WWE a little more mainstream, which I think has been the goal in the while, which is why they did the transition to the PG era and everything. I mean, these moves to get more folks from Hollywood, involved in the product, it seems like a natural thing for them to do. It's something they've been doing for a while. Do they need to do it with
Okay, you broke up again.
Okay. That's weird. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, figured out, I promise. That way, the next time we do this, it won't be nearly as awkward. It'll still be a little awkward.
Yeah.
It's got to be a little awkward.
It's not fun if it's not a little awkward. And especially since the next time is going to be immediately following the Money in the Bank pay-per-view.
Late that night. Oh, well, I don't have anything. I'm a teacher now. I don't have to work in this. I'm stay up late doing podcasts. Anyway, in terms of break into the mainstream, does WWE need to get these Hollywood guys on board with a little more frequency, or do on it and try to continue to let themselves grow a little bit more naturally? Because, like I said, they in the mainstream, they have recognizable names, but people aren't really all that with the overall product. So what does WWE need to do in terms of getting some guys from the mainstream to come in and help?
I think it's a matter of finding people like Stephen Amell who actually, if they're not fans of the product, they're at least going to have fun with it. When Jeremy Pivens was a guest GM, he had fun with it. Hugh Jackman, I was actually surprised how into it he was, because he seemed like he'd be more of an uptight actor. But they have a habit of getting people where they write something, they'll write like a cheesy segment for them, and they look like they could care less. I mean, my favorite was Sean Hayes saying how embarrassed he was to be on Raw, which is funny because he was there promoting the Three Stooges movie. But you get actors where they do it just because the publicist told them that they're supposed to. It doesn't really add anything to the show, and I don't think it helps the company. Or even like when they had the A-Team on, where like Bradley Cooper basically came out, said hi, introduced Quentin Jackson and the guy who played Murdoch, and that was all you saw from the entire night.
I think my favorite guest appearance, I have two in the last couple of years that I really love. Several years back now. God, I'm losing track of time. I hate getting old. Anyway, when Bob Barker was the guest GM for a night, that was an amazing guest appearance where he was really involved in the show and did a whole lot, including a devastating chop to Chavo Guerrero and causing him to just completely collapse. And I think the other one, if only for the fact that we now have in canon that Beaker from the Muppets is related to Seamus. The Muppets did a fantastic job.
Oh God, you know what it was? I was because I've always been a big Muppet person, and when they announced that they're going to be on the guard, this is just going to be completely stupid. As much as Vince McMahon wants to pretend that they're not wrestling, that entertainment. Having Muppets there, that's like a WCW RoboCop thing. But that was actually very, very funny and very entertaining. I was actually impressed with that. And I think you froze again.
You froze on me. Anyway.
Okay, you know what it is? Maybe we're freezing on each other.
Okay, so what we need to do is to be able to pay for internet connections that actually allow us to do this podcast. After following,
yes, at Blazing Fast,
5 people.
I have 2 computers open. Let me try shutting this computer off, because I had Twitter open.
Pee Wee Herman as a special
That was okay.
Guest. Say the Big Show was his cousin or something.
Yeah.
Back when Big Show was a convincing face and he was a very not convincing heel.
Big Show was very not convincing everything. He's just not convincing.
No, He's a decent actor on USA Network shows. That's about it.
Which isn't saying much considering USA Network shows. I'm sorry. What audience do they think that they're reaching advertising Chris Lee Knows Best?
I don't know. I think Chris Lee Knows Best is a very good indicator of just how poorly civilization has developed over the past 20 years.
I mean, I get that there's a lot of reality shows that people like that I just don't get, which is fine. I mean, people are allowed to watch. There are 800 TV channels. You can watch whatever you feel like. But it's they don't advertise America's Top Model on Raw. They don't advertise the Real Housewives of wherever on Raw. Find me one wrestling fan that actually sees the commercial for Chris Lee Knows Best and tunes in and says, "Ooh, I have to watch that," and I will punch that person in the face.
I'm just assuming that it is a random USA Network fan who tunes in on Monday not knowing that there's wrestling going on. Okay. Like, what comes on after this? Oh, Chris Lee's coming up. We can watch that. My mom watches Chris Lee Knows Best, and she turned. There was a marathon on the last time I was visiting, and I told her that my visit was going to be cut very short if this continued, and she seemed to get a little offended at that.
Yeah, my mom enjoys The Nanny and the Long Island Medium.
Is Long Island Medium still a thing?
It's still a thing.
Oh Lord. Anyway, Long Island must be proud.
We are, but between her and the Gaudis and the Jersey Shore.
Let's see. We've got a few minutes left. Okay, one last question. Going back to booking.
Okay.
One of the things that has me kind of confused right now is the fact that Bray Wyatt, in terms of performance and character, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, we made it a full circle. It almost all seems relevant. In terms of booking and character, Bray Wyatt is one of the strongest guys out there, but has nothing right now. Why is that?
Because the creative team sucks. I mean, this is a perfect example. So, like, all right, and a lot of this is stuff that if you listen to the CM Punk podcast that he did with Colt Cabana, but he's talking about where he would always want to know, like, oh, if I do this now, what's next? Because they always had Punk losing to part-time wrestlers that didn't take him anywhere. And, that's basically what Bray Wyatt was doing. I mean, he had this big feud with John Cena that eventually he lost, wound up not going anywhere. The Ambrose feud kind of petered out. And they set up the big feud with him and Undertaker, which, of course, he loses at WrestleMania. And he's done nothing since then. The big thing was, like, the big reveal that he was going to feud with Ryback, who he beat. And even though he pinned Ryback goes on to win the Intercontinental title, and Bray Wyatt, it's just basically, I don't know what the hell's wrong with these people.
Here to see a guy who has this incredible promise, a soul warping type character. Does these
the best character they've had since The Undertaker.
Great, exactly, and he seems like a natural fit to succeed The Undertaker, which is why I was wondering whether or not Wyatt would have beaten The Undertaker this past WrestleMania, because I think it is a very natural succession there, and to see how he's been handled is one of the more disappointing things I think I've seen this creative team do. And they've done a lot of really disappointing things because, well, they're not so great. Incidentally, if anybody out there is on Twitter, you look up WWE Creative-ish. I forget the exact handle name, but it's one of the best parody accounts out there in terms of professional wrestling. Definitely catch that. And I wish he was still actively tweeting, because Chris Sims, like I said, over at Comics Alliance, one of the best in terms of tweeting WWE events as well. I wish he'd get more active on Twitter again. But anyway, I think that's one thing that we've got to see coming up this week in terms of how they handle everything leading up to Money in the Bank is, how is the creative team going to book all this? How are they going to make sense of the chaos that they continuously write?
it's a weird combination of people in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Because in all honesty, Roman Reigns, that's the only person in the match that makes sense. But he already won the Royal Rumble, so like, who cares?
Yeah, how many chances are we going to give this guy who was really unable to get over with the crowd and was very forced on the crowd to try to make him go over? I mean, how many chances is he going to get versus somebody like, say, Sheamus, or should I say Rocksteady for those of you who are Ninja Turtle fans? Are we going to give this guy with the funny hair a chance to go back into the main event scene? Or are we going to take one of these other guys who really has – are we going to take Dolph Ziggler? Far and away, one of the best performers.
Like that too much.
Well, Ziggler is one of those who could sell anything and does it so wonderfully. And I think WWE does feel burned with him because, he would get these great matches and then have an injury or whatever, and he was at risk for concussions a lot because of, again, his style. But Dolph Ziggler, I think, is the only other one in that match that, to me, in terms of the crowd, would make sense giving that briefcase to. Then you also don't see the briefcase going to that many faces, at least in recent memory. I think Cena was the last one. That was way back, and he didn't even cash it in, like normal people do. He, called a match ahead of time, so he's cashing it in for a main event one night. So in the Money in the Bank ladder match is going to be weird. The ladder match between Ambrose and Rollins, I think, is going to be a really good one.
That's going to be sick.
That and both of them just going at it with ladders. I mean, the Hell in a Cell match between them was one of the best I'd seen in a long time. So give those two anything and they can make a good match.
Okay, the lumberjack match. I was pissed off that they announced they were going to have a lumberjack match in the first place. Because here I am, they figured, all right, Dean Ambrose. I think this was SummerSlam this year. Dean Ambrose can book a match. I would figure he would do something like a ladder match or like pinfalls kind of anywhere, stuff like that. And when they did a ladder match, it's like, oh, this is gonna suck. They even made they even when they announced the lumberjack match was gonna suck. They even made a lumberjack match entertaining.
And those are never entertaining. Like, those are impossible to make entertaining.
Yeah.
So I don't know. These guys are going to give a good show.
Because they always do.
Watching and the _ Esquire, and no, I'm not a lawyer, so it is safe to follow me. Week, barring, assuming that we can keep these technical glitches going. Can they find you?
They can find me at twitter.com/Brodigan. To make it very easy for you.
Are listening, or you see this or hear this, and get a go, and I'll have the audio for this. This show is about wrestling or anything else for that matter, you can do so. You can tweet to us using the hashtag VRR. See, outright, it's very hard to say. And I think that'll. Mr. Brodigan, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you again next week.
Looking forward to it. Peace.